Hi, good day. Welcome to my first video. Today we will be exploring the enchanting world of building large language model powered apps with the OPL stack. You've probably heard about large language model like ChatGPT and GPT-4. They're fascinating and they capture people's imagination. However, they have a few limitations. Number one is what they call hallucination. Sometimes ChatGPT and large language models can provide wrong answers with overconfidence. Number two is their training data is up to until September 2021. So they have less up-to-date knowledge. If you are trying to asking about recent trends and topics, you are probably not going to get very satisfying answers. One of the rising solutions to overcome such challenges is using OPL stack. OPL stands for OpenAI, Pinecone, and Langchain.
The key components of the OPL stacks are OpenAI offers large language models such as GPT-3, GPT 3.5, which is the one powered ChatGPT, and also the latest one, GPT-4. They also offer an embedding model. The latest one is called ADA 002. Pinecone, you can use that as a vector database to store the embeddings. Langchain is one of the most popular libraries in the large language model ecosystem. I will start with chains. Chains are almost like the predefined pipeline to allow you process user input, compare the user input with the vector space, retrieve relevant context, and using that context to prompt engineering the large language model to retrieve response. For people who have never heard of Pinecone before, you can think of Pinecone as similar to SQL database, but instead of storing the column-based data, you would store vector embedding. Embedding is just a process to turn text into a list of numbers. Pinecone allow you to store embeddings with a unique identifier, the embedding itself, and you can also add metadata. Next, I'm going to show you how to use the OPL stack to build a ChatGPT with domain knowledge. The typical process starts with first get all the articles or a web page, whatever you wanted to use as a knowledge base. And we are going to use Langchain's recursive text splitter to break those web pages or articles into smaller chunks. This way you get relevant information. The next step is we're using OpenAI's embedding model to embed those texts into vectors, and we will store those vectors in Pinecone database. And then during inference stage, for example, if a user asking a question, what are the best running shoes in 2023? We will also embed this question query into a vector, and then this vector will get compared with all the vectors stored in Pinecone database. We'll use Pinecone's similarity search to find the ones that are most likely to answer the user's question. We will store those as a context. And together with this user query large language model, we will send it to chat vector DBQA chain, and then we will get a response. And we can also retrieve source. Okay, so this is the app I built. It's called Chat Outside. It's a ChatGPT plus outside knowledge base. And if we ask the question to both ChatGPT and Chat Outside about what's the best running shoes in 2023, and my budget is about 200. So you can see from ChatGPT, it will say as a AI language model, I don't have access to information from the future. That is directly talking to GPT 3.5. Versus if we ask chat outside, that is GPT 3.5 plus the Pinecone knowledge base. The latency, it is relatively high compared to normal API. So you can see it gives you a nice response as well as those source links, which is quite nice. We can also try ask other questions about hiking. Let's ask about could you recommend a hiking trail in San Francisco that is under 4 miles long and has a view of water? Yes, it recommended. I lived in San Francisco for a number of years. Yes, it recommended the Presidio in San Francisco has a 2.7-mile trail with a view of Pacific and Golden Gate Bridge. We can also ask Chat Outside to do something. We asked Chat Outside to come up with a 3-day meal plan for a keto diet. Nice. Here's a 3-day meal plan for a keto diet. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Very cool. Now we wanted to test about safety guardrails. And the question we are going to choose is a political question. As an AI language model, I cannot provide an opinion on who vote for. That is nice. That is the answer we wanted to see. And finally, we also wanted to test what if somebody asks about personal questions. As an AI language model, I cannot make personal decisions for you. It's up to you to decide whether or not to break up with your girlfriend. However, it's important to have an honest conversation with her and about where you stand for the future of the safety guardrail passed. Next, I'm going to walk you through the prototype code. Now I'm going to show you how I built this app. The app I built is using Streamlit to do the front end. And they're essentially just 2 Python files. One is this app.py, and the other one is the utils.py. In utils.py, which is the one I store all the supporting functions, in apps.py, including the front end part from the Streamlit settings, and also the core functions we will call from utils.py. So let's start with the, I'll do a walkthrough for the utils.py. So import necessary packages. And for OpenAI, we, as we mentioned, we need to call OpenAI for 2 things. One is the large language model, and the second is embedding model. The large language model, we're going to use the GPT 3.5. That is the one, the same powered ChatGPT. And for embedding model, we're going to use 8.002. For Pinecone, we need to specify the API key and index name. And the only important function is called QA with sources. So this is using Langchain's vector DBQA with source chain. You specify the large language model, that is the one using OpenAI's Chat GPT 3.5, and the chain type and vector store is the Pinecone vector store. So that's our supporting function. And then, so in app.py, we will start with specify the OpenAI API key, and we will provide Streamlit settings. Those are just the site notes, and you can provide a homepage title. You can add a hero image. After title, the first section we saw is ChatGPT only. And that's the function for ChatGPT only. You specify the OpenAI chat completion model, that is GPT 3.5, provide template message. One thing I will mention is most people suggest using temperature equal to 0. That will give you the most deterministic answers. That is to say, if you ask the same question multiple times, it will give you more or less the same answers. And then you return the response. In the ChatGPT only section is more like a Q&A style. So we just have a simple input and a simple output text box. The section 3 is the chat outside part. Chat outside part is we're using the supporting function from here, QA with sources. And we just get the answer as answer, and we get the source. Source is the URL links as source. And if you don't know, if they cannot find any answer, then it just return an arrow. And then section number 4 is because for the chat outside is more similar to a chatbot style. So the section 4 is how to display the chat outside in a chatbot style, which you have accumulated conversation message. You can also use this to specify the different avatar.
Lastly, I want to mention a few misconceptions around ChatGPT. That is, people think when you ask a question, ChatGPT just remembers all the data before 2021 September, and therefore they're just retrieving from the memory, but that's not how it works. After training, ChatGPT actually deleted all the original data. All the maintained is 175 billions of parameters. So they're incredibly good at predicting what text come next. That's why if you are just copy paste the response into internet, it's very unlikely to find the exact source from the response generated. And the next thing is, do we have to use Pinecone for vector store? The answer is no. There are actually many other options. Like Chroma, you can even use Redis. Sometimes you don't even need to use a vector store. If you're thinking about production this app, I would still recommend using a vector store for better scaling and also for fast retriever. So speaking of production, do be aware that a single Pinecone does have limitation on how many vectors they can store. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Bye.